Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 69 of The Clutch Dump. I'm selling my Cayman. I'm going to be an Overlander, and Ben is still stuck with his Camaro. All on this episode of The Clutch Dump.
20 years of trying, 20 years.
And Senna sprints away.
On the straight, Rossi's right in behind Lorenzo.
The 101st Indianapolis 500 is won by Takuma Sato. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500.
Before we get into, I genuinely think probably the most racing we've covered in a single episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Clutch Dump. And if you're listening to us, I hope that our voices bring you some sultry solstice during your week. But make sure, if you enjoy, to subscribe and to follow us on those podcasting platforms. And if you're on YouTube, you'll see that Ben, for whatever reason, is wearing a MotoGP hat when MotoGP didn't happen. And I am wearing the hat of El Padre.
Because the only Formula One hat I have is a Ferrari hat, and they suck. So they don't get a hat.
Call Ben a fair weather fan, but he decided not to wear it. But that's not the point. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Maybe not your mother, but everybody else.
Bunch of people.
Yeah, everybody else. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Your girlfriend's parents, whoever. But
whoever.
We have SuperGT, Porsche Super Cup, IndyCar, Rally, NASCAR, Formula One, IMSA,
Formula 2.
Yes. Yeah.
There's actually another one, but I didn't get to watch it, and I really want to watch it. So
no, well, that's the thing. Everything we listed, we have watched. So.
Right. So there's one more that I didn't watch, but we're just not going to cover that.
It made it a lot easier that NASCAR was on a Saturday night. I'll tell you that much, because I had
it was
noon that I normally wouldn't have to watch other stuff.
Yeah. So that was quite nice.
So where start with?
I was about to ask, where do we want to start on this list? I kind of want to start with Formula One, just because it's here and I want to get it over with.
Apparently, Formula One as a sport is a sack of shit unless it gets a little wet, and then a bunch of Europeans don't know what to do. And I just want to say, but before we even get into the results, Formula One, if drivers don't feel comfortable racing in full wet conditions, they don't have to. However, if someone is comfortable doing it, let them. I.e., let's say you're Alex Albon and you drove in a downpour on slicks. Mm-hmm. Let's say it starts being a torrential downpour like it did. And he decides, if I drove in pouring rain on slicks, I can deal with this in wets. And all other 19 drivers were like, no, I'm not going to risk it. Why not reward Albon for risking it if he was going to?
Nick, because that's not fair.
1976 Fuji, Niki Lauda gave up a world championship.
It's not the 1970s.
Hey, do you want to tell your dog to shut the hell up?
No. Even if I did, she wouldn't listen to me, so it doesn't matter.
But that all being said, I am so sick of NASCAR. There you go. Of F1 being like NASCAR, where it's like, oh, it's raining too much. Why not just make the intermediates the wet and get rid of the wet? You don't, because here's the thing. It's not just that it's a shitty tire. When it gets to the point where full wets are required, F1 red flags it anyway. So you might as well get rid of the tires. It's so stupid. It doesn't have to be the 1970s. Fuji, 2007. Kubica and Massa.
That was like 20 years ago, Nick. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's not important. Very sorry.
Ben, are you really going to tell me you'd rather have an hour-long or more red flag than just bare-knuckle brawling on the track?
I was hanging out with the homies, so I was fine. Anyway, qualifying, we had Kevin Magnussen in P20. He did start from the pit lane. Liam Lawson, which is someone we do need to talk about, because Daniel Ricciardo in Free Practice 2 had a shunt with a wall and hurt his wrist. He has a broken wrist, so he's going to be out for a while. And there were, for some reason, rumors that Nick DeVries was going to come back and take his seat, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But without a doubt, Liam Lawson came in, and he actually did quite good this weekend for his Formula One debut. But Liam Lawson qualified P19. Valtteri Bottas in 18th. That Alfa Romeo is still struggling. Yuki Tsunoda in 17th. Ocon down in 16th for qualifying. Zhou Guanyu in 15th, Nico Hülkenberg 14th, Lewis Hamilton, surprise, down in 13th, not making it into Q3, Pierre Gasly in 12th, Lance Stroll in 11th, Logan Sargent in P10, making his first Q3 appearance, the first Q3 appearance for a Formula One driver since 1993, Mr. Mario Andretti.
An American Formula One driver, and it was Michael Andretti.
Yeah, same person. Logan Sargent P10, Charles Leclerc down in P9, Oscar Piastri was in 8th, Sergio Perez 7th, Carlos Sainz was up into 6th, Fernando Alonso was in 5th, Alex Albon was in 4th, very impressive weekend from him, George Russell was 3rd, Lando Norris was 2nd, and no surprise, Max Verstappen was in 1st for his home Grand Prix. Moving on to our race results, we did have several DNFs in the form of Logan Sargent, Charles Leclerc, and Zhou Guanyu, all of them.
Before we go any further, Logan Sargent's was a failure of the car. He did not wreck. It was not his fault. Well, I mean, he did wreck.
Correct.
It was his fault. It was a hydraulic failure, as confirmed by James Vowles, if you watch the post-race. So before any Europeans were like, Americans, you don't know how to do me. It wasn't his fault. Also,
it's true, but not in this case.
In qualifying, Brendan saw a bunch of memes, and it was hilarious. It was like Logan Sargent saw a banking and thought he was at Talladega.
Exactly.
So
that's actually pretty good. But Logan Sargent DNF, Charles Leclerc DNF, he hit a wall, and Zhou Guanyu DNF because he hit a wall. George Russell finished last in P17. Kevin Magnussen was down in 16th. Horrible weekend for the Haas driver. Was running way up in the points at one point in time, but then just fell down to bad strategy. Yuki Tsunoda was in 15th. Valtteri Bottas 14th. Liam Lawson finishing in front of Yuki Tsunoda in 13th. An outstanding result from him. The fact that he finished it all is incredibly impressive, given
Daniel Ricciardo has yet to finish that high in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, given how much of a disaster this race was, incredibly impressive result.
Who had never driven this car until yesterday.
Right.
In some of the shittiest conditions, make it through without a hitch and nearly scored points.
Yeah, so
this is why I think Daniel Ricciardo's career is actually screwed.
I was thinking the same thing. My dad and I
have a multiple-time race winner who, I guess, got distracted by a McLaren and wrecked his car, which that still doesn't make any sense. He didn't lock anything up. He literally just didn't turn in. So he gets distracted by a McLaren, wrecks.
It happens.
You're telling me with all of his experience, he's like, oh. And then, like, what? Dude. Like,
well done, Liam Lawson. Probably ruined Daniel Ricciardo's career. Nico Hülkenberg was in P12. Lance Stroll was up to P11. Decent result from Stroll, given that he's Lance Stroll and is going to be a tennis player. Esteban Ocon was in 10th at the start of the points. Oscar Piastri was in 9th. Very strange race for the McLaren pair this weekend. Alex Albon was in 8th. Lando Norris was in 7th despite starting 2nd. Lewis Hamilton made it up to 6th. Carlos Sainz was in 5th, once again proving that he's not as bad of a driver as everyone thinks, and he should be in that Ferrari seat.
It's not even that. It's that Leclerc is not as good as everyone thinks.
Sergio Perez was in P4. Pierre Gasly was up into 3rd because Perez got a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So well done to Pierre Gasly for having his second F1 podium, I think is what it was. Something like that. Anyway, Fernando Alonso, P2, back on the podium. It's been a while. And then Max Verstappen, P1. No surprise there. Editor note, cut the past 10 minutes out. And then Max Verstappen, P1, which was no surprise to anyone. It was his home Grand Prix. I don't think anyone questioned whether he was going to win this or not. Nick, do you have any comments on the race before we talk about next weekend's race?
Well, there's a lot to talk about on this race, and I think we should, I know we have a lot to talk about, but I feel like we should at least devote another 10 minutes to this race because it was an absolute cluster. It was entertaining. The fact that, let's just take a minute and admire the fact that Fernando Alonso had the fastest lap of the race, and it wasn't like some fluke, like Verstappen had it, Perez had it, Verstappen beat his own fastest lap 3 or 4 times in a row. And then Alonso beat both of theirs.
Yep.
Got driver of the day, and rightfully.
And then it rained.
Because that first lap.
Because Nick has 1,000 bot accounts that just went and voted for Fernando Alonso.
I watched, because you texted me. I watched it after it had already ended. The first lap, making up those positions. In the wet, he was closing on Max when they were all on slicks, and I was kind of hoping that it would be something where they just had to tiptoe around. And the same thing at the end. Granted, Max finished with like a 3 or 4 second advantage. But the fact that Fernando for 2 laps was keeping it within a second, and for a minute there, looked like he had the potential to throw it up the inside. I mean, this was like... I mean, Julian and DC said it enough in the booth, but this was one of the drives from Fernando. Other than Bahrain, I think this is the best drive he's had maybe since Hungary 2021, and then prior to that, who knows when. Like, back to the Ferrari days.
Right.
Those Hungary 2021, Bahrain, and this are his top 3 drives in like 10 years. And so this one was just... I mean, guys, he made the mistake at Spa, and it was completely his fault. And so part of me was like, Fernando is going to excel in these conditions. And then part of me was like, yeah, but he just screwed up. It's like just total random mistake. So how much can I really trust that he won't do that here? And he didn't. Almost got screwed with the first round of pit stop rotations because I was like, oh no, he dropped the 6th. Like, maybe he makes it to 4th. But, and then... Yeah, I mean, obviously as a Fernando fan, this was a fantastic race. But as any fan, seeing Albon, seeing Yuki Tsunoda, seeing, who else? I mean, even, listen, I don't like him, but Lewis was on a charge. Seeing George Russell's save of the year coming down.
Crazy save.
That was absurdly crazy good. Everything about this race was enjoyable except for the red flag. And you know why it was enjoyable? Because it wasn't a predictable 1-stop. Or a predictable 2-stop. And
it was like 5 stops.
and call me crazy, it was a test of skill.
What a concept.
Right?
Right.
That's what I'm
can we talk about the fact that Red Bull hates Sergio Perez?
Well, yeah, I think they intentionally screwed him on the undercut by Max.
Dude, okay, so if you didn't watch the race...
One lap, closed by 4 1/4 seconds in 1 lap.
To be fair.
Hadn't passed Perez, and I think that if Perez hadn't been undercut, Perez would have put up a fight.
But they were, pit stops were 1 lap after the other for the 2 Red Bull drivers, and Sergio had a 10.9 second pit stop. I didn't know that Red Bull knew how to do a pit stop that slow. And then the rest of his stops were high 2 seconds, low 3 seconds, whereas Max had several 2.2 second stops. Which just, I don't know why they hate Sergio. I mean,
slow stop too, which makes me sick because Alonso finished less than the time lost in his pit stop behind Verstappen. So,
right. So, yep, pit stops. They're a thing. Let's see.
But do you enjoy it? Like, what do you actually think of it all, other than the kind of stuff up at the front?
I mean, I thought it was a fantastic race. I did like the variability in weather. When we say we like wet races, this is what we mean. We like it to start dry and then rain and then dry out and then rain.
Or like it all wet. Where there's no minimum compound requirement. It's just drive. Like, just go.
Well, but the problem when you do that, though, is there's... The FIA does FIA things at that point, and it's not that interesting.
Still more interesting than all dry.
Well, just about anything is more interesting than an all-dry Formula 1 race.
Facts.
So it was a very entertaining race for like 30 seconds. There was hope that Max Verstappen wasn't going to win it, but no surprise. But he did, in fact...
When you have British commentators saying that it's Formula Max... Like,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
And then when Red Bull's talking about sweeping the entire season, like, guys, what the hell?
Yeah, but to be in Max's defense, congratulations to Max Verstappen and to Red Bull for tying their previous record of 9 wins in a row with Sebastian Vettel.
Which, you know what the crazy thing is I think Vettel's was more impressive.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So what were you saying?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. All Formula 1 records get less impressive the newer that Formula 1 gets. That's just how Formula 1 records
Vettel
work.
had McLaren and Ferrari that were consistently winning that season.
Yeah.
Max won 9 in a row, but no one else has won outside of Red Bull. So
yeah, no one else was close. So
Checo.
Right. It's kind of it.
I told Shelby, I was like, come on. I was like, come on, Fernando. Chase down Perez. I was like, show Christian Horner why you should have been signed.
But yeah, it was a good race. Of Formula One races this year, it was probably the best this season.
Think this was the best, and Monaco was probably second best.
Right. But what could possibly be an interesting race is next weekend we are going to Monza. Which, not only is it a fantastic track,
Red Bull will annihilate,
but there is the Monza curse, which, if you're unfamiliar with,
I'm unfamiliar.
Okay, so in 2019, Charles Leclerc won, and in 2020, DNF. In 2020, Gasly won. In 2021, DNF. In 2021, Ricciardo won, and in 2022, he DNF'd. Last year, Max won.
It's not going to happen. Max
I know
will
it's
be
not
the
gonna
guy
happen.
that breaks the curse.
He will be. It'll be him. It'll be his
Max
thing,
will
and there will be a
take the curse
giant
by the
thing
neck.
about it.
Max will take the curse by the neck and just backhand the shit out of it. Just pop, 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 pop.
Yeah. But there is a glimmer of hope. Tiny bit.
Sebastian Vettel and Alberto Ascari's win race record in a row at the track that Sebastian Vettel got his first race win at. That's depressing.
Yep, that kind of sucks.
Made it sting just that a little bit extra more.
Just a bit more. To be fair, though, Vettel probably doesn't care.
Vettel doesn't care about anything.
I don't think he
Other than
does.
the environment, but
Which is why I kind of like Sebastian Vettel, is he just doesn't care.
yeah, but see, Fernando doesn't care, and he's better. So
Yeah, but he's old. So anyway, I think that's going to do it for Formula 1. Nick, do we want to go straight into Formula 2? Do we want to talk about something else?
Go into Super
What do we want
Cup.
to do? Super Cup. There was a Super Cup race. I know nothing about it. Nick watched it because it's a Porsche thing. Please elaborate.
2. So there was race 1 and race 2 of the Porsche Super Cup race at Zandvoort. And if you don't watch Porsche Super Cup, but you watch Formula 1, that means half of you have cable and the other half are silly because it's on F1 TV.
I'm on the silly half.
It's included in your subscription. There's 16 lap races. They take all of like 30 minutes to watch. So there's no reason to not watch them. And even though Formula 1 was sensational, the Super Cup races were better. They were just lights out. So I couldn't find the full results without like taking a photo of the timing tower on the TV. But on the Porsche newsroom, they have the top 6 from each race.
Perfect.
So I am going to quickly go through. Bastian Boos, who is the current championship leader, was 1 position short in race 7. There was race 6 and race 7. He was 1 position short from winning the championship in this race. So Super Cup's going to Monza with Formula 1. So the results of race 6, starting in 6th place, was Hub van Eindhoven, who was a guest driver. In 5th, we had Alessandro Gueretti in 5th. In 4th, we had Bastian Boos. In 3rd, we had Larry Ten Voord. In 2nd, we had Luke Hartog. And in 1st, we had Morris Schuring. Morris, Luke, and Larry were all Dutch drivers. It is the first all-Dutch podium in the history of Porsche Super Cup, period.
How conveniently at Zandvoort.
Right. So that's pretty cool. That was a really hard-fought race. I mean, Morris Schuring dominated, but the rest of them were battling it out. So that was race 6. Race 7, these are the results. 6th, Alessandro Gueretti. 5th, Harry King, who had a miserable race 6. Like, he got hit once, wasn't his fault. He got hit again, wasn't his fault, got more damage to the car. Got hit a 3rd time, wasn't his fault, got more damage. And then into turn 1, got absolutely turned around, wasn't his fault. And it was like, this guy just cannot catch a break. So he finished 5th. 4th was your previous race winner, Morris Schuring. 3rd was Larry Ten Voord. 2nd was Bastian Boos. And 1st was Luke Hartog. Bastian Boos was all over Hartog for the final 5 laps of the race, nearly clinching his first championship. However, Luke Hartog became a debutant on the top step of the Porsche Super Cup podium. So, congrats to him and his team. First time race winner at Super Cup, good for him. And if Bastian Boos wins the championship in Monza, it will be his first Porsche Super Cup Championship. That is to say, ladies and gentlemen, new winners and new champions can happen in other racing series. You don't.
Oh my gosh,
Right?
it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, next time at Monza next week, make sure during F1 free practice sessions or during, whenever there's a break, watch some Porsche Super Cup. It's gonna be sick.
And if you don't watch Porsche Super Cup, make sure to come back here because we'll make sure to report on it.
Exactly.
Mr. Patty, what would you like to talk about next? Would you like me to run through Rally real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So this past weekend we had the Ojibwe Forest Rally, which is the second.
Can you say that again?
Ojibwe.
Slower.
Ojibwe.
Interesting.
It's pronounced exactly how it's spelled.
No, I just wanted to hear you say it and sound like an idiot.
No, that's. I've been following ARA for several years. I'm actually familiar with this rally. It's the Ojibwe Forest Rally. It's a dumb name. But it is the second to last rally on the ARA calendar. Not that ARA particularly matters anymore because as we get to the championship standings, Brandon Simonik has quite the substantial lead. Makes Max Verstappen's lead look minuscule.
Wow!
So,
There's something more boring than Formula One?
It's not more boring because everyone's in a different class than him. So it's like only Max Verstappen, and then you've also got F2, LMP3, LMP2, and GT cars on the same field, but also Max Verstappen's there. So it's like, yeah, we know that he's going to win.
Right.
Just look at the rest of the chaos. But anyway, I'm going to run through some of your results here. So Brandon Simonik, obviously, tops up the podium in his 2023 Subaru WRX with a total time of 1 hour, 46 minutes, and 54 seconds. 11 minutes behind him.
Huh?
11 minutes behind him was Javier Olivares in his 2021 Ford Fiesta. I believe that is an R2 spec car with a time of 1 hour, 57 minutes, 0.47 seconds. Now, something to remember, this is done over 2 days, 17 stages. They add up all the times at the end.
Still.
But just heads up, Brandon Simonik is in a class of his own this year. And that's kind of the sucky part about ARA, is now that Travis Pastrana doesn't do it, and obviously Ken Block, we're kind of out of people to challenge Brandon Simonik. I'm kind of hoping that Leah Block in the next couple years will step up into
you just gotta get in there, dude. Get in there with your 4th gen and show them what's up.
I'll tell you what, dude. I follow a page on Instagram. All it is Rally Camaros. It's a great page.
And here I was thinking the Rally Porsche was out of place.
The first race that a 911 ever won was a rally race. It's more in place than it being at Le Mans.
That is not true.
So anyway, the Ojibwe Forest Rally, Brandon Simonik tops up the podium. Javier Olivares in P2. Matthew Dickinson came in third in his 2015 Subaru WRX STI, just less than a minute behind Javier with a time of 1:58. Those were both in limited 4-wheel drive. Tops up the podium for open 2-wheel drive was Michael Hooper in his 2010 Lexus IS350 with a time of 2 minutes, 4 seconds, 2 hours, 4 minutes, 0.10. Sorry, I forgot how to read time. And then behind him in open 2-wheel drive was Nathan Odell in another Lexus IS250 with a time of 2 hours, 11 minutes, and 30 seconds. Excuse me. Moving on to your standings. This is where things get a bit ridiculous. Brandon Simonik leads the championship with 161 points, and behind him is Patrick Guska with 82 points. So it's been mathematically impossible for someone else to win for a very long time. But so congratulations to Brandon Simonik and Vermont Sports Cars and Team Subaru USA for a second ARA championship in a row. Obviously hard fought. Next year they will be debuting the new WRX rally car on the new WRX platform, which obviously there isn't an STI variant of. So that should be exciting. Matthew Dickinson is in third. Leah Block is in 4th overall with 38 points. She is leading the open 2-wheel drive class by almost 50 points. There's one more round remaining of the 2023 season at the Lake Superior Rally. That is October 13th through the 14th. So stay tuned for that. Mr. Patty, what would you like to talk about next?
Well, what should we say for last?
I'd kind of like to save IndyCar for last.
Okay, fantastic. I will do Super GT.
Perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, Super GT happened this weekend, and it was round 5 for Super GT, both GT 500 and GT 300. Next week is Sugo, and that will be, let's see. Huh? Okay, the dates don't make sense.
Confusion?
That's fine. So, let me run.
Real quick, hold up. No. I'm sorry. Before you get in there, this is for both the people and for me. Is there any way that we as Americans can watch Super GT?
Yeah, how do you think I watched it?
Okay, how did you watch it? Where'd you watch it?
Or TV.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
It's $5 a month, so.
No, all right. Well, there you go. Perfect.
No, it's great. It's fantastic.
I didn't know.
That.
Now we know.
They have that. They have a bunch of other GT racing and stuff. So anyway.
Cool. Carry on.
I'm not gonna lie. I was bored while I was starting to make dinner, and so I was like, I gotta put some other racing on because Porsche Cup ended, and I was like, I still have Motorsport TV, and I saw on Instagram that Suzuka was today. I was like, screw it, throw it on.
Perfect.
So anyway, we have Super GT, and in the GT 500 class, finishing in last, and by finishing I mean they were just qualified, is the O'Toole Autech Z of Suyo Matsuda and Ronnie Quintarelli. In 14th, the last finisher, we had the Arta Mugen NSX GT, 8 laps down of Tomoki Najiri and Toshiki Oyu. In 13th, we have the Realize Corporation Advan Z of Daiki Sasaki and Kohei Hirate, and they were 1 lap down. Now to your people who finished on the lead lap, we have the Natera Motul Z of Katsumasa Chiyo and Mitsunori Takaboshi. They were 1 minute and 30 behind. In 11th, we have the Deloitte Toms GR Supra of Yukio Sasahara and Giuliano Alesi, who's Jean Alesi's son, by the way, finishing 1 minute and 9 seconds behind the leader. In 10th, we have AU Toms GR Supra of Sho Saboy and Ritomo Miyata. They were 1 minute and 8 seconds behind. In 9th, we have the Wed Sport Advan GR Supra of Yuji Kunamoto and Sena Sakaguchi. They were 1 minute and 8 minutes behind. They were only 3/10 ahead of 10th place. In 8th, we have the Modulo NSX GT of Takuya Isawa and Kakunoshin Ota.
Well done.
They were 53 seconds behind the leader. In 7th, the Stanley NSX GT3 of Naoki Yamamoto and Tadasuke Makino. They were 42 seconds behind. In 6th, the Zent Sarumo GR Supra of Yuji Tachikawa and Hiroki Ishiura. They were 40 seconds behind the leader. In 5th place, we have the Morelli Impulse Z of Kazuki Hiramine and Bertrand Baguette with being 29 seconds behind the leader. In 4th, we have the Astemo NSX GT of Kodai Sukakoshi and Nobuharu Matsushita. They were 26 seconds behind, only a half second behind 3rd place, which was the Enios X Prime GR Supra of Kazuya Oshima and Kenta Yamashita. They were 26 seconds behind the lead. In 2nd place, the Denso Kabelco SAR GR Supra of Yuhi Sakaguchi and Yauichi Nakayama. They were 24 seconds behind your winners, the Arta Mugen NSX GT of Narei Fukuzumi and Hiroki Otsu. Now that was GT 500. Let me read GT 300 for you. And if you're wondering what the difference is, GT 300 is essentially GT3 driving with a few cars that are not actually homologated for GT3 international competition. GT 500, for our listener, is like DTM mixed with GT1.
They're crazy cars.
Super sick.
They're making like 700 horsepower now. They're nuts.
And they weigh almost nothing. So your GT 300, we had 25 competitors, 4 of which did not finish. We have an Audi, an AMG, a Supra, a Nismo GT3 GTR, all of which did not finish. Their last finisher in 21st was the Maxiakin Airbuster MC86. And yes, that is a GR86 of Yasuki Tomibayashi and Takamitsu Matsui. They were 17 laps down. In 20th, we have the RQ's AMG GT3 of Hisashi Wada, Masaki Janoi, and Masaki Kano. In 19th, we have the Shokumo's K's Frontier GTR of Taiyo Ida, Takumi Sanada, and Masaya Kono. In 18th, we have the Shade Racing GR86 of Katsuyuki Hironaka, Ejiro Shimizu, and Shinosuke Yamada. In 17th, the APR GR86 GT of Hirokai Nagai, Manabu Orido, and Yuta Kamamura. In 16th, the Studier BMW M4 of Seiji Ada and Bruno Spangler, who is a famous BMW driver you'll know from Europe. In 15th, the Gagne Tanax GTR of Ryuichiro Tamita, Keiichi Ishikawa, and Yasuki Shiotsu. In 14th, we have the run-up Revo GTR of Takayuki Aoki, Atsushi Tanaka, and Takui Otaki. In 13th, we have the Ponos Gagne GTR of Hironobu Yasuda and Riki Okusa. In 12th, we have the Cintium LM Corsa GR Supra of Hiroki Yashimoto and Shinsuke Kono. In 11th, we have the Pacific Vispo NAC AMG of Ryohei Sakaguchi, Jiatong Liang, and Shintaro Kawabata. In 10th, we have the Yanest Iwata Racing RCF GT3 of Igor Omura Fraga, Yuga Furutani, and Miki Koyama. In 9th, we have the Yogibo NSX GT3 of Yugo Iwasawa and Rimi Ito. In 8th place, we have the K-Tunes RCF GT3 of Morio Nita and Shinshi Takagi. In 7th, we have the Muto Racing GR86 of Yui Tsutsumi, Hirobiki Tara. Sorry, I didn't roll my R there. And, not Tada. And then being Hiroki Kato. In 6th, in the APR LC500H Lexus, Kokisaga, Kazuto Kotaka.
LC500H.
Yep, and Yuki Nomoto. In 5th place, Mercedes-AMG GT3 from Good Smile Hatsune of Nobuteru Taniguchi and Tatsuya Katokia. In 4th, we have the Lamborghini from J-Lock Racing, the GT3 of Takashi Kogure and Yaya Morojima. In 3rd, we have the Subaru BRZ R&D Sport Car of Takuta Iguchi and Hideki Yamauchi. In 2nd place, the Bamboo Airways Lamborghini of Kosuke Matsuda and Natsu Sakaguchi. And in 1st place, the Up Garage NSX GT3 of Takashi Kobayashi and Seun Koide. Those are your round 5 Suzuka GT300 leaders. And for our listeners, that was the Suzuka 450-kilometer race. So it was like a 3.5 hour race.
Yo, this LC500 looks rad.
All of the Super GT cars look better than any of their counterparts.
For starters, Super GT cars it is unfair how cool they look. They look so rad.
The Z, and then the fact that a GR86 looks more menacing than most actual GT3 cars.
Well, I remember a couple years ago when they ran the early BRZ. This thing. When they ran the early BRZ cars in GT300, they looked so cool. And I know that
is the GT300 BRZ still have like 15-inch or 16-inch wheels. Like they're actually tiny. It's not like they're like a frame
crazy.
Much bigger. They're still tiny.
Also, they all have awesome liveries on them.
Oh, yeah, the liveries.
They're all good. They're all good. I can't wait for next year when they start running that Civic. I know that we've talked about it like 6 times, and I need to shut up about it, but I can't wait for it. It looks rad. So Super GT, I'm going to go back and rewatch those tonight because that sounds awesome, and I really like Super GT. Do you have anything more on Super GT, sir?
No, that was it.
Fantastic. In that case, I'm going to run through Formula 2, and then we're going to move to NASCAR or IMSA. Now, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll be very confused as to why we're talking about Formula 2 because we rarely talk about it, as in we never talk about it. However, I did take the time to, I normally follow it, like look at results afterwards, but I don't watch it. I did watch it this weekend, just because I think Zandvoort is an awesome track, and I'm glad that I did because actually a lot happened that could be interesting for the championship.
There's one of the best driver radios of all time, where the guy was like, "Bada bada."
So good. Formula 2 is actually fantastic racing. There's a lot of chaos going on because there's some amateur drivers, so sometimes people just like go just dive bomb the inside, which happens several times in the races, and it just doesn't work out for them. But that's kind of the good thing, is you can really tell which drivers deserve to be there and will become Formula One drivers,
right?
And which ones you can tell it's like, your dad paid for you to get here. But just before, I'm going to go through our race results real quick, and then I'm going to talk about what it means for the championship.
Can I just talk about how proud I am, Ben, that we are only at 35 minutes right now, and we have gone through Super GT, one race, 2 races of Super Cup, Rally, and Formula One.
I know. I'm quite impressed. Also, I really wanted to talk about Formula 2 and IndyCar, so I'm kind of running through the rest of them.
No, you're good. That's fine.
But actually, before we get to our race, it was a sprint weekend for Formula 2, or at least it was supposed to be. No, hold up. Because some sprint notes, because it lasted all of 2 laps. So there was contact between Cushmini and Jack Crawford, which sent both cars spinning off at turn 5, with Ralph Boschung unable to avoid collision with his Compost Racing teammate. The number 24 car of Cushmini ended up on top of the number 25 car.
Oh, I saw a photo of that.
Of Ralph Boschung. The session was red flagged, and by the time they got it cleaned up, it started raining super hard, and they did not restart due to heavy rain. Now, you did just hear us complain about the FIA doing stuff about not racing in heavy rain. Something to note about Formula 2. Formula 2 does not have tire warmers. They only have softs and mediums, and they do not have a full wet tire.
Right.
So you only get softs, mediums, and intermediates, and you do not get tire warmers. So it is incredibly difficult to get any sort of heat into a tire on a wet, cold track. So it actually does kind of make sense for Formula 2 not to do that, especially since it was only a sprint race.
Well, and here's the other thing. Theoretically, they aren't to the level that F1 drivers are. So from Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion at the peak of motorsport, you'd expect a little bit more than...
Right. You know, it's one of those things of these guys. A lot of them have probably never raced in conditions like that before.
Or potentially never at Zandvoort. Like, if you did race an F3 there, you've never raced there.
Right, so it's quite possible that this was like a worst case scenario for some of these drivers. So I think it was best for both the teams from a financial standpoint, the drivers from a health and safety standpoint, and the FIA from having to clean up the track every 2 minutes standpoint. That was a good call. So no points were awarded for the sprint race because of race distance not enough being completed. However, moving on to our race results, if you don't follow Formula 2, there's probably a few names that you are familiar with. And I'm going to list 4 of them right now. Jack Doohan, son of Mick Doohan, the motorcycle racer, Ollie Behrman, Frederick Vesti, and Theo Porcher.
I've heard of that one.
Okay, those are currently your 4 championship leaders.
Did they all wreck?
They all DNF'd in the race. So those are your 4 DNFs from the race. So in 18th place, finishing the race, was Cushmini. Jehan Daruvula was in 17th. Ralph Boschung, who was in that accident in the sprint race, finished 16th. Joshua Mason finished 15th. Arthur Leclerc, son of Charles Leclerc, finished 14th.
Huh?
Yeah. Sorry. Hold up. Little brother, my bad. I was just thinking about Jack Doohan, so I'm sorry.
Arthur was like, son of Shore. I'm like, huh?
Sorry. I was thinking about Jack Doohan, son of Mick Doohan. Arthur Leclerc, little brother to Charles Leclerc, finished 14th. Ayuma Iwasa finished 13th. Roy Nassani finished 12th. Roman Stanek finished 11th. Juan Manuel Carrera finished 10th. Victor Martins was 9th. Amari Cordial was 8th. Enzo Fittipaldi, yes, that Fittipaldi, was 7th. Isaac Hadjar was 6th. Dennis Hauger was 5th. Richard Verschoor was 4th. Jack Crawford, who was your pole sitter, was 3rd. Zane Maloney was 2nd. And Clement Novalok came first in your race. So some race notes. Theo Porcher was in the barriers in turn 7. That was under his own accord. Frederick You'll like this one. You could probably go find it on Instagram. Frederick Vesti had both rear wheels come off of his car. Yeah. So that was a fun one to watch. He made it through turn 2, and basically he's coming out of turn 2 with the car.
It was coming up the hill and going down.
Oh, it was down the hill, so that's like turn 6 or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was just after a pit stop. He was on his out lap. He goes through a corner, and as he's coming out of the corner, the car gets crazy squirrely, and you're like, oh, he must have found a wet patch or something. And then the wheels fall off, and he loops it. And it resulted in one of the best in-car radios ever from the guy behind him, who was completely confused, understandably. Ayuma Uwasa, who is your third-place championship leader, had contact into turn 1. That dropped him way down in the standings for the weekend. Jack Duhan didn't start the race. He had mechanical issues. He did not start the race. Victor Martins and Ollie Behrman came together at the exit of 3. That's the left-hand banked turn, forcing Behrman into the wall and was out of the race. So basically what happened was Behrman was outside, and Martins essentially ran the normal line and went wide out of turn 3 and squeezed Behrman into the wall, resulting in him being out. So your championship standings still, Theo Porcher has 168 points in first, Frederick Vesti 156, very close. Behind him, Ayuma Uwasa with 134, and 4 points behind him is Jack Doohan with 130 points. None of these 4 drivers scored points this weekend. Crazy. And with only 2 weekends in the season, this could be huge for the championship. Yeah, it was such a crazy weekend for the championship standings. The commentators were having a great time with it.
Oh, I bet.
Because, I mean, it's one of those things of, like, just, I don't know, who would it be? Just Max, Sergio, Fernando, and Lewis. Yeah, just imagine those 4 were in separate accidents throughout the race and didn't finish. You know, and it's like...
Alex Albon would win.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't even care who wins now, just because it's someone different, and we have no idea what this means.
The podium is Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, and Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, so that was a fantastic weekend. So I'm going to make sure to keep up with Formula 2 for the rest of the season. Sadly, the rest of the season is Monza next weekend, which is going to be great, because Monza's a great track, and any racing at Monza is good racing. But... we then have to wait till round 14, the final round, which is at Yas Marina, November 25th. So they put a big old chunk in the middle, very consistent, and then they just end the season, and they're like, yeah, we'll just do the final race at the final Formula 1 race, which is fine, but it's very weird. I don't know why they didn't space it out a bit more, like skip a race every weekend or something. Like, they run the normal Formula 1 schedule, and then just... after Monza, like, okay, yeah, we'll just, everyone can go home, and we'll just guys, don't worry about this until,
guys.
See y'all at Thanksgiving.
Isn't that an American holiday? Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, hey.
So, a fantastic weekend from Formula 2, some good racing.
Ben, do you want to cover IMSA or do you want to cover NASCAR? And when I say you, I mean not next, but which one do you want to go through?
Oh, which one do I want to cover? I'll cover IMSA, because NASCAR I kind of had on in the background. I just watched. I watched both of them.
Okay.
But I pretty much the only thing I remember from NASCAR is a guy going flying through the air.
Yeah.
So I'll let you cover NASCAR, Mr. NASCAR, and then and then I'll head up IMSA.
So this weekend in NASCAR was the Coke Zero 400 at Daytona. So this is the second time that NASCAR runs Daytona. There's obviously the Daytona 500, and then there's always the late summer fall race. That's the second visit to Daytona each year on the calendar. And this race had a lot of playoff implications for a lot of big names. Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott. I mean, but nobody really cared.
It's fine.
Let me just say this. I take so much pleasure. For the first time in his career, Chase Elliott has not made the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs.
Is it the first time in his career?
Yep. And
okay, I was surprised because
it doesn't feel good.
I could not remember if he hadn't made it or not.
It feels so good, especially knowing that William Byron has like 4 or 5 wins this season, and they're in the same damn car. So
tough.
Whew, feels good. So screw you, Chase Elliott.
Oof.
Bubba Wallace made it through to the playoffs for the first time in his career, and he was congratulated by the big man, Michael Jordan, immediately after the race.
Oh, the actual big man. Okay.
Bubba Wallace outed himself sort of in the post-race interview. Did you see his post-race interview?
No, just heads up for people that watch. I normally don't watch post-race interviews. I just don't like podiums, so normally like checkered flag and then I leave.
Bubba Wallace says, like, we've been working so hard for this, and I really want to thank my wife for sticking with me because I'm pretty rough to be around, and I've been poor to her when things have been rough. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, he's outing himself as beating his wife. Like,
This man's having a therapy session on TV right now.
Yeah, Bubba Wallace from Alabama goes home in NASCAR after not doing well, says he treats his wife terrible. Like, what? Bubba, maybe keep that dirty laundry in your yard. I don't
feel like he's gonna have a meeting with the PR team after that.
No, literally, like and as he was saying it, he's like stuttering and pausing, and I'm like, he's sitting there and he's like, shit.
He's like, man, there's a lot of words coming out of my face right now. Most of them which were supposed to stay inside the coconut, and it's just not happening right now.
He's like, I'm so thankful for our sponsors, and man, my wife, she gets the shit wrung out of her. But I'm only laughing about it because it's, to me, abhorrent that he would
it's
treat his wife terribly, but then secondly say on international television, like, I'm really bad to my wife. Like, huh? Anyway.
Yeah. Strange. Anyway,
I literally turned to Shelby. I was like, "Huh? What is he? What is
happening right now?"
Yeah, like they asked him, "How do you feel? What are the emotions?" He's like, "The emotions are, I don't think my wife is gonna be too happy
about the race, not
Bubba,
in general."
Bubba, I don't care how you feel.
Ovals. How do you feel? Emotions about the ovals.
Bubba, V8
anyway,
not toasters and bathtubs. Keep it together. So
anyway, the Coke 0400.
Yeah. So I'm going to run through the results, and then we got obviously two big talking points to talk about. Holy shit, it's a lot of results. And 39th, we have somebody, Brendan Poole, is that his name? I don't know, I've never heard of him. Riley Herbst in 38th, Austin Cindric in 37th. You know what? Austin Cindric, Riley Herbst, Brendan Poole, Ryan Blaney, Ty Gibbs, Ricky Stenhouse, Austin Dillon, Todd Gillen, Ryan Preece, Chase Briscoe, all DNF'd. I wasn't going to have to go through that individually.
It's a lot of names. Well done.
29th, AJ Allmendinger. 28th, Harrison Burton. 27th, Kyle Larson. 26th, Danny Hamlin. 25th, Tyler Reddick. Your regular season champion, Martin Truex Jr. in 24th. And if you're like, regular champion, what does that mean? Nothing. 23rd, BJ McLeod.
Yeah, NASCAR's weird. That's what that means.
21st, Justin Haley. 20th, Daniel Suarez missing out on the playoffs. JJ Yaley in 19th. Eric Jones in 18th. 17th, Ross Chastain. 16th, Christopher Bell. 15th is Chandler Smith. That's right. 14th is Austin Hill. 13th, Michael McDowell. 12th, Bubba Wallace. 11th, Ty Dillon. 10th, Corey LaJoie. 9th, Kevin Harvick. William Byron in 8th. Kurt Busch, holy shit. Kyle Busch in 7th. Alex Bowman.
There we go.
Chevy in 6th. Joey Logano, Mr. Bosley, multiple wrecks and several laps in Indianapolis. Joey Logano in 5th. Chase Elliott in 4th. Eric Almirola in 3rd. Brad Keselowski in 2nd. Christopher Buescher in 1st. RFK's first 1-2 result in NASCAR since 2012.
Dang.
So Christopher Buescher takes his 3rd win on the season. No, it was not 3rd in a row, but 3rd in the season. I believe that's the most wins he's had in a NASCAR Cup Series season. This race was a fantastic race. Like, the finish,
it was very good.
Was super speedway racing at its best with the next gen car. It was really good. Highlight was first a crash involving Ryan Blaney, which, did you see it?
Yes, I did see it. I was watching the race, but I didn't process or compartment anything. No, not really. I had it going on the second screen over here. I was working over here.
Same corner, same angle, same speeds that killed Dale Earnhardt Sr. The exact same spot. And if you look at the replay, exact same angle, that right front corner nosing up into the wall. And if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, but Ryan Blaney didn't die.
Han's device.
No, not just that, but that part of the track has safer barrier. It's not.
Oh, does it?
So in the wreck, you see it absorb the impact. And the next gen car obviously being first and foremost designed around safety.
Crazy stout.
It was eerie because when I saw it, I was like, oh, I picked up on it, obviously, like, holy shit, that's coming out. Like, that's where, and so, it's makes you feel sad because you're like, unfortunately, Dale Earnhardt wasn't racing at a time where these innovations were created because he didn't have to die from that. That's not a situation in which everybody where that happens passes away.
Yeah, that's the sucky thing about, amazing racing drivers that die from racing. Whether it's him or Senna or any other racing driver who passed away doing what they're passionate about is one of those things. It's like, well, if they just had the safety of today's car, who knows? Senna could have gone to win 13 championships. Who knows? Stuff like that. So it sucks, but thankfully they've fixed that. So
yeah. So that was the first accident, and then the second accident was easily the worst accident I have seen in live television.
It's the worst one I've watched live. It was terrifying. It was creepy to watch.
We quite literally, all three of us, me, Shelby, and Brendan, were on Twitter on latest, # Ryan Preece, because it was trending within minutes on Twitter. Literally within minutes. It was number one trending in the U.S. And we were constantly looking for updates. So fortunately, he's fine.
Okay.
But up until the morning after, we didn't know that he was fine. Because he was taken to a level 2 trauma center at Halifax. And level 2 trauma, as Brendan was explaining to me, is basically they're ready to do intensive surgery within an hour. So that's kind of the nameplate for last minute, you're in trouble. Gotta help this guy. Keep his life.
Need something fixed now.
That was scary. He flew through the air 11 times. There was nothing left of that car, but at the same time, there was more left of that car than I thought there would have been.
Than there should have been from flipping 11 times.
We were worried because we didn't know if he had a brain bleed with a head being thrashed around that much. Granted, you're in the you have a Hans, you're harnessed. So what that means is your body doesn't move much, but that doesn't mean the shit inside your body doesn't stop moving.
Yeah.
Organs, fractured bones potentially, and to our knowledge, none of that's been the case. And he tweeted
as
out,
far as I've seen, he had minor injuries.
And he tweeted out, "Damn it, I'm coming back. I'm racing that Ford Mustang." And I'm sitting here and I'm like, because they said,
relax.
They had their first kid at the beginning of this month. He and his wife.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not saying you'd be a pussy for leaving, because if I'm in that situation, I would have a serious wake-up call of, I could have just died and we just had a child with my wife.
That might be one of those things of...
Without a kid, just being married, having someone else that is in my life, if that had happened to me, I'd be like, you know what, Shelby, I'll do racing, but this is not the method I'm going to be doing it.
This has been great, but I'm going to do somewhere you don't flip at 190.
Like Dario Franchitti's done, right? He had that life-threatening incident, and he still races, but nothing that is IndyCar level. So anyway, thank the Lord Ryan Preece is okay. Extremely happy he made it through, and it just is a testament to NASCAR safety. So all those people bitching about the next gen, you can respectfully shove it up your ass.
Yes, Ryan Preece disagrees with you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's going to do it. That's going to do it for our NASCAR coverage for this week. Stay tuned for next weekend where we cover the Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway.
The playoffs.
Yes, the playoffs. I'll actually put in effort to watch NASCAR. Maybe.
We should just have a Google, whatever the Google FaceTime equivalent is, so I can make sure you're watching it and watch it.
Perfect. But we also had IMSA GT Challenge at Virginia International Raceway.
And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know GTP wasn't running until I turned on the broadcast. I was like, come on, man! I just wanted to see the Penske Porsches.
I had it in my thing. I didn't have it as GT Challenge because by the way, you wouldn't know this because you don't. You being the listeners wouldn't know this, obviously. But there's a giant spreadsheet that Nick and I have of all of the races this year that we're going to cover. And I just had it down as IMSA VIR.
Right.
Which was high hopes. I was like, yes, hypercars, LMP cars. And then it was 19 car grid? Where'd they go? But nonetheless, GT racing is always fantastic, as we talked about with Super GT and many times before. So we had the GT Challenge at VIR, which was fantastic as we do start to close up the IMSA season, as we do only have 2 races left. It's always crazy to me that Formula One runs so much longer than everything else. Formula One and MotoGP run way longer than everything else.
And very quickly for our listeners, it's the Brickyard in September, and then we have Petit Le Mans. So those are the next 2 races.
right. Petit Le Mans is going to be tons of coverage from the two of us.
Oh, good.
Because Petit Le Mans is always fantastic, and we've got a ton of guest surprise drivers coming in for that one.
Oh, I was like, we're having guests? What?
Yes. No, sorry. There will be tons of guest surprise drivers in Petit Le Mans, so that'll be fantastic. I'm going to run through your results real quick. Down in 19th for Kelly Moss with Riley 911 GT3R, we had David Brule and Alec Oidel. All right, then you get to run through the names if I'm going to mess them all up.
Yeah, let me find
It's
it.
It's in the notes page.
I know. I'm just finding. Okay, here it is. All right.
Because I'm going to mess it up.
Udell was last.
There we go.
In 18th, we have Laura Spinelli and Mikhail Goikberg, and that was a scary crash in the Lamborghini with a brake failure. In 17th, we had Daniel Gianella and Jules Gounon. In 16th, we had Roman DeAngelis and Marco Sorensen. In 15th, we had Ross Gunn and Alex Riberas in the Aston Martin. 14th, Mike Skeen and Mikhail Grenier in the Mercedes-AMG. 13th, the all-female lineup of Sheena Monk and Catherine Legg in the Acura NSX GT3. Klaus Bachler and Patrick Poulet in the FAF car in 12th.
Rip.
Alan Brynjolfsson and Trent Hinman in 11th with Wright Motorsports. In 10th, we have Alan Metney and Kai Van Berlo in the GT3 Porsche. We have Brendan Arieb and Frederick Schandorf in 9th in the McLaren. Unfortunately, they had a penalty, otherwise they could have potentially won. In Rexy, we had Seb Prio and PJ Hyatt in the GT3R. In 7th, we had Frankie Maltacavo and Aaron Tielitz in the Lexus. 6th, Bill Oberlin and Chandler Hull in the BMW M4 GT3, who got passed in epic style by Russell Ward and Philip Ellis in the Windward Racing Mercedes. 4th, Patrick Gallagher and Robbie Foley in the BMW. 3rd, in another BMW, Brian Sellers and Madison Snow, breaking an IMSA record of 5 GTD wins in a season. 2nd was Jack Hawksworth and Ben Barnicoat in the Vassar Sullivan Lexus. And in first place, fighting for their lives in the championship, Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor in the
boy
E8R. And a couple notes. David Brule had a huge shunt in turn 6. The Lamborghini had 2 big offs, both because of brake failures. In the number 23 Heart of Racing Vantage, Alex Riberas goes off after contact with the number 32 Mercedes in turn 2, rejoins with no issues, and then the number 32 Mercedes goes off after contact with the teammate of the 23, the number 27 Aston Martin Vantage. So, karma's a bitch. Ben,
yes, it is. That was actually quite funny to watch.
Do you want to run through the Bommarito 500 IndyCar race?
I would love to run through the Bommarito 500 IndyCar race. It was actually a very good race. I normally don't watch. I'm not super huge about oval racing, but it is usually really good.
I love, and this is why refueling is good, I love the IndyCar. You could be a lap down and somehow you're in the fight for a lead because of the alternate strategy, and you could actually be several laps short, but actually fuel save to the point where it makes it like, God, IndyCar.
Yeah, it's...
Anyway,
yeah, their strategy is, for those of you that don't watch IndyCar, strategy is such a huge deal in IndyCar. Yes, it's a big deal in all other forms of motorsport, obviously, but it's so big in IndyCar, and unlike Formula One, where it's all pit stop strategy, and before the race, they'll show you a little tire graphic of like, oh, you could do these 3 different strategies or whatever.
IndyCar, you can do like whatever the
IndyCar is like a scroll. It's like 50 different strategies or whatever. It's like, are you going to stop 4 times or 3 times or 12 times? Are you going to pit for fuel every time, every other time? Are you going to put on, blacks or reds or alternates or what are you going to do? So IndyCar is fantastic for strategy because quite literally until it's over, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, every single
especially
lap.
Because fuel strategy is such a big deal. You could get down to the last lap and then someone run out of fuel. You could. So it's always fun to watch. But I'm going to run through your results here real quick. Down in last place was Benjamin Peterson, who made contact with the wall on lap 1. Callum Eilot was in, what would that be, 27th. Takuma Sato in 26th. Joseph Newgarden down in 25th. He was not out of the race, but he was very far down, 50 laps down. Ed Carpenter in 24th. Helio Castroneves in 23rd. Agustin Canapino was in 22nd. Stingray Robb in 21st. Graham Rahal in 20th. Devlin DiFrancesco 19th. Linus Lundqvist was in 18th. Christian Lundgaard was in 17th. Connor Daly was in 16th. Kyle Kirkwood, 15th. Ryan Hunter-Reay in 14th. Santino Ferrucci was in 13th. Roman Grosjean was up in 12th. Rinus VeeKay in 11th. Marcus Ericsson, 10th. Will Power in 9th. Felix Rosenqvist in 8th. Alex Palou, still your championship leader in 7th. Colton Herta in 6th. Very eventful race for him. Scott McLaughlin in 5th. Alexander Rossi in 4th. David Malukas 3rd. Pato O'Ward in 2nd. And your race winner for the second race in a row is old man Scott Dixon.
I don't know how the hell he does it. Can he stop?
It doesn't make sense. Honestly, it's so funny, though, because the commentators, like, when he started to actually have the lead of the race, they were like, yep, Scott Dixon just doing Scott Dixon things. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? It's
what does that mean mean?
Well, he has so much experience. He's so good on fuel strategy. He made that fuel last so much longer than everyone else did. He did 65 laps. Without pitting for fuel. It made no sense. It was crazy. Especially between going from winning a road course race from essentially last because he spun on lap 1 to winning an oval from 7th. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy.
Sorry, I'm trying to find... okay. I do have a bit of IndyCar news just before we end this episode because we're talking about it. Andretti Autosport signs Marcus Ericsson for 2024. It happened just after we recorded our last episode.
All right.
But you know what's interesting? You have an Indy 500 winner and a championship contender leaving the best team in the sport for Andretti. Marshall Pruitt tweeted saying it's a good move and here's why. I don't understand why. Because you're leaving the best team for a team that hasn't been competitive.
Right.
How is that good?
Money. I'm going to go with money. That's usually the answer. But, like I said, Scott Dixon, 2 in a row with that amazing race from 7th on the grid. We have 2 more races for this season. That seems to be kind of the trend with all of the series that we follow at the moment, is we got 2 races to go, except for Formula 1, which has 9 races to go. But 2 more races for the season. Grand Prix of Portland, which is next weekend, and then Grand Prix of Monterey the weekend after. So September 10th is the end of the IndyCar season. And a little update on your championship. Scott Dixon is the only person with a mathematical chance of beating Alex Palou in this year's championship. So your champion this year will be either Alex Palou or Scott Dixon. Palou has 565 points. Dixon has 491. There's 108 points still up for grabs in the season. 54 points a weekend, obviously. So, I mean, to be fair, obviously heavily in Alex Palou's favor, being, what is
I'm not gonna lie.
74 points ahead.
I hope Scott Dixon does it. I really don't like Scott Dixon, but I don't like how dominant Alex Palou's been, so I'd love to see Scott Dixon out of nowhere come back and win it.
Well, actually, that was going to be something that I was going to kind of wait till we cover Indy as a whole, but since you brought it up, I'll mention it now. This has actually been a very weird IndyCar season. We've actually had a lot of repeat winners for this season. So obviously, Alex Palou has won 3 in a row. Joseph Newgarden has won 4 races. Let's see here. Marcus Ericsson won 1. Scott McLaughlin won another. Kyle Kirkwood won 2. And Scott Dixon has won 2. And Christian Lundgaard has won 1. So we have several repeat winners for this season, which for IndyCar is pretty rare. Normally it comes down to the last race and it's like, oh, there's any of these 7 people could win it. And it's pretty crazy that the only people possible are Alex Palou, who has had a very dominant season, and Scott Dixon, who kind of came out of nowhere, 2 races ago. So very crazy, but should make for a good end of the season. I'm kind of crossing my fingers that Scott Dixon wins next weekend as well, and Alex Palou DNFs or something, and then we get like a final winner take all. I don't know. It should be interesting, nonetheless. But that's going to do it for IndyCar, and that is going to do it, I think, for episode 69 of the Clutch Dump.
Racing in 63 minutes.
An abundance of racing in a rather short amount of time when you think about it. Like Nick said at the top of the show, make sure you follow us on social media, on Instagram, at The Clutch Dump. Look for our logo up in the corner. Whatever audio podcast platform you're listening to this on, make sure you follow or subscribe. There should be a button. Hit whichever one there is. Leave a rating and a review if you can. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Comment down below what you think about all the series. Which series should we follow? Which series should we not follow? We probably won't listen to you, but let us know.
Hey,
and make sure you...
Be nice.
Well, of which series we shouldn't follow.
Be nice.
Sorry. Comment down below. But make sure you subscribe, like, share, all those good things. That's going to do it for us. We will see you Tuesday for a very, very special episode 70. That's going to do it from us here. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.